It is easy to forget the niche nature of stealth-oriented gameplay when bits and pieces of it are strewn about the gaming landscape to the point where their presence is taken for granted. At first, they were just much derided unique linear segments, but now they are more or less incorporated as a near omnipresent auxiliary system. But when a proper stealth experience comes along, it really does make you wonder if those elements should be associated with a parent genre at all, given how watered down they are. The latest title to inspire this feeling is Styx, Shards of Darkness, a game about being a goblin in a world where this simple fact leads to a death sentence most of the time. Fortunately, the titular protagonist is keen on living a long life, and his mastery of infiltration, subterfuge and assassination makes this a more than feasible goal. His misadventures are fraught with dangers that provide all sorts of opportunities to utilize his shadowy skills. An experience that emphasizes slow analysis of patrol routes and methodical execution of devious resolutions that lands Styx firmly in the anti-part of anti-hero. In other words, Styx is great. Why? Because Thief is the greatest stealth game of all time, and Styx is about as Thief-like a game can get while still being modern. You see, both Styx Shards of Darkness and the previous title, Styx Master of Shadows, are these Frankenstein creations, with an old school core design that is layered with modern elements to make them playable or at the very least marketable towards a bigger audience. Because stealth games have always been a niche genre, and their spread to other genres reveals the reason. The fantasy that stealth sells is that of the underdog, of someone who must sneak by his enemies, or else, whose combat skill set is limited while their sneaking abilities are expansive. The shallow stealth most games peddle is more akin to the Predator fantasy. Much like the movie, your sneaking is more about vanity and show rather than utility. Someone like Corvo Attano or Batman can lurk in the shadows and come out for takedowns, but if their cover is blown, it is no sweat off their backs. If anything, open combat expands their possible gameplay repertoire, since they can use all their loud and bombastic moves that would have given them away otherwise. But true stealth is different. Styx's fighting skills may allow him to go for the occasional duel, but even then, running is more advisable. The moveset is restricted rather than expanded upon when getting discovered, which is decidedly meant to not give the player a power trip. Styx also has some features that go even beyond Thief, though the whole experience will not match it. Excluding non-lethal takedowns was a great design choice, mainly because these just allow the player to play levels in the same manner as a full kill run, without the guilt of murder. While there are some stun moves, they are all temporary. If you want to not be seen at all while not killing anyone, you have to ghost past all the patrols, without the advantage of being able to remove any of them. The other feature that actually feels innovative in the context of stealth games is the clone. Styx can create and control a version of himself that only has the basic moveset, but if discovered, it doesn't trigger an alarm, and their low creation cost means it is quite spammable. This is a great ability that solves an issue stealth games have regarding saving. No matter how observant you are, it is possible to miss something, or worse, have the game screw you over in some fashion. And this was usually alleviated by constantly saving and loading. While Styx also provides this option, it also allows you to test out different approaches at a minimal cost without breaking the flow. It really does encourage no save runs, since you have a very useful tool to mitigate bad calls on your or the game's part. The risk and reward, if you will. Which is what stealth games truly revolve around, risk and reward. In fact, it is no surprise that you will find many stealth enthusiasts that are also into strategy or tactics games. These tickle the same part of the brain, hence the overlap. However, the aspect which earns these games the most praise, even from the most ardent critics, is the level design. A superb showcase of verticality and that specific Swiss cheese routing that makes you ponder on how to approach the entrance, only to find an easier secondary entry point, and once inside you manage to leave via a third route you didn't even think possible. It's something intrinsically satisfying to roam around the different paths of a huge but very well defined level. There is some real award-winning design here of creating challenging individual rooms that each tests various aspects of the core mechanics while keeping the flow of the architecture relatively logical. I mean, you have moments where the holes near the ceiling seem a bit too gamey, but overall it does feel coherent. An above average art direction also helps a lot. Styx might use familiar fantasy elements, but they look quite distinctive in their design in comparison to many other franchises. To be perfectly honest, I have not seen a series where the project lead being a level designer was more evident. Julien Desotou is his name, and you can see that he and his team take great care when it comes to their craft. If Game Awards were more diverse in the way Oscars were, then these guys would surely get the level design prize. It is by far the game's strongest aspect. Unfortunately, it has to share the spotlight with the game's weakest aspect, the killing. If you are to compare Styx's assassination gameplay to its peers, then it will probably feel sorely lacking. Games like Dishonored almost feel tailor-made for snazzy YouTube creative kill compilations. Styx, on the other hand, is quite bland in comparison. Combat is a rather annoying quicktime event that doesn't feel satisfying in the context of a stealth game. And the assassination moves aren't anything spectacular. Hanging kills, covered kills, you have seen all of this before. The only interesting move comes from the clone, yet again, the ability to hide one in a closet or a chest that acts as a spring trap when enemies are near. But overall, I don't think this is a problem, or at least that big of a problem, because games like Thief or Styx are stealth games with action elements. The in-game achievements reflect this the best. For every level, you have 4 secondary achievements for speed, no kills, no detection, and collect all the tokens, small coins spread throughout the level. None of these universal secondary goals encourage direct combat or assassination. The game more or less ignores these parts and nudges the player away from them. In this regard, Styx is closer to Hitman, a game which also has an action part but encourages stealth as the true way to play. A game such as Dishonored considers both its stealth and combat equally valid, offering morality paths and different changes based on what you do. Though the high chaos path might be considered evil, mechanically it acts as a contextualization of an aggressive path, while Styx completely ignores this path. There is a difference here. Although I must say that the sequel kind of stretches this to its breaking point. The first one, Master of Shadows, was a middle-of-the-road game with an overall warm reception. Though many reviewers accused it of being too old school, many gamers who were disappointed by the current state of stealth games took this as a massive plus. I was among them. Though it had annoying modern elements such as the highlight vision, and the AI was easily abusable. It was still a true stealth experience at its core. Of course, the budget wasn't the biggest. The main character has nice voice acting, but the rest of the cast not so much. The art direction was excellent, but the texture quality decidedly less so. But it was easy to forgive if you were interested in the core gameplay. At any rate, 2.5 years and an engine switch later, we got Shards of Darkness. Essentially the same game at heart, but with massive improvements. Playing the first level was an absolutely amazing experience for veterans, since you get hit with one improvement after the other. Ledges can now be easily hanged off with one simple button hold, Styx moves and jumps at a faster and more responsive pace, amber vision is toned down to much more subtle feedback, and so much more. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, the gameplay dichotomy between true stealth and budget action gets much more pronounced in this one. Now there is a more extended skill tree and equipment that can be gained through a crafting system fueled by materials scattered along the levels. This all leads to having a way easier time of dispatching enemies if you so wish. Heavily armored guards used to be invulnerable to attacks and needed to be taken out with environmental hazards such as falling chandeliers or poisoned food. Now there is an easy to make acid trap that kills them. In response, there are far more of them, but that ultimately cheapens them. Same thing with the smell sensitive guards. In the first game you had some really difficult to deal with enemies that could catch your scent. In the new one you can find the formula for an anti-odor perfume to negate this mechanic. By the end, all enemies can be countered to the degree that they all blend in, which is highly disappointing. I understand that crafting was put in to give more varied rewards for exploring a level, but it seems this system was more in service of diverse way to take out your enemies, rather than complement the stealth gameplay. Even the items that are stealth focused seem superfluous. Poison darts temporarily stunned the enemy, but the same thing was achieved by the short-range clone stun from the previous game, which is still present here. The issue is that the developers sat at a table and said that we certainly will make stealth better, but we also need to make the combat/assassination better, even though we don't really want players to do that. There is something innately disappointing in all of this. Now don't get me wrong, I still think the Styx games are ace. My biggest complaint about the new one is the cringy fourth wall breaking jokes, and the story isn't anything to write home about. It is actually even worse than the first, and that is an achievement given how inconsequential it all was. but being somewhat of a fanboy of the gameplay, I could easily ignore these issues. The pure stealth approach offers an experience that is unique in the current gaming landscape. That being said, it is impossible not to see how schizophrenic the balancing act that the devs are trying to pull here is. The fact that development time is spent on the action element, probably as much as the stealth element, really casts a shadow over the experience. Trying to ghost the levels on the highest difficulty is clearly the way the game is meant to be played, even the lead holds this belief. But it is hard not to notice when skulking through the shadows the overbearing amount of elimination methods and wonder if all those development resources couldn't have been spent to make a better stealth game. Though niches are niches for a reason, it is just sad that developers have to cloak themselves in Assassin's Creed and Dishonored when they really want to make Thief.